because we look at the pictures, we see people walking in the streets, but it was like the protesting was the means to the end. The end was getting arrested.
Yes.
Right? Like the point was to which they took from Gandhi, to fill the jails, to like overwhelm the system, because the idea was like, hey, if they do it one by one, which is what they've been doing for 100 years, they win.
Yes.
But if we actually outnumber these people, and we have supporters in the North and all over the world, that if they could see what was happening, if it wasn't happening in secret, it would suddenly take on a different light. And so it's like the protesting, I think we learned the wrong lesson. In my view, the protesting was the pretext to create the police overreaction, to flood the judicial and prison system or jail systems, to then create so much pressure that things would have to change. It wasn't, oh, we're just going to all get in the streets and show them that we're serious.
Yes.
Like, so now I feel like today people are like, well, we should all protest.
Yes.
And it's like, nobody gives a shit. I didn't think they gave a shit then either.
Yeah. I think with the protest, I think it's complicated in this sense that they did want to do the jail, no bail.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But at the same time, one of the things I've seen doing the research on this book is that there were other places like Danville, Virginia, and just all across the country who did protest, and just the very act of protesting. So for them, some of them went to jail, but a lot of them didn't. The very act of protest showed a kind of collective community. And at times, one great example of this is the protest outside the Justice Department on maybe June 15th, 63, that Malcolm X is at. But the New York Times and other newspapers talk about there's a noticeable Asian American presence. Oh. And there's a noticeable white presence at this protest, right? Yeah. So the very act creates, and some people say a kind of theater, and I agree with what you're saying, there is a performance to this, that we're gonna show and narrate a story with our bodies. Yeah. But I also think that there was something radically democratic about what they were doing by getting together and protesting peacefully, right? So it's something that even Bobby Kennedy, I've got a scene here where he's talking with Jack Kennedy and they're interviewing, they're talking to all these business leaders and different stuff. But he's saying after a while, if I was treated like the Negroes, and Negroes are how people said to consider black people at the time, so it's not something to be taken offensively. But Negroes, if I was a Negro, I would protest too. And he said it's a time-honored American tradition. So that's what's so interesting, that the protest becomes something that's actually in this time period patriotic.
Yes,
very
and transgressive in a way that it is post-civil rights movement, not transgressive. And so I think we kind of learned this wrong lesson, which is like, it's showing our numbers. Like, okay, in 1963, that's a powerful statement. In 2023, it's a less powerful statement. Because,
although in 2020, think of BLM, 25 million people, it seemed like it was going to transform the world.
But maybe that's the point, which is like just showing, hey, a lot of people support this is insufficient political pressure. Yeah. Because today we have polling that already shows that they've decided not to give a shit. You know what I mean? So I think, I guess what I'm saying is we don't give, and you talk about this a lot in your Malcolm X, Martin Luther King book, which I think is really interesting. Both of them were very astute at discerning political leverage and applying pressure. Like Martin Luther King talks about how, there's the power of persuasion, but there's also the power of coercion. Yes. And that's fundamentally what they were doing is showing, it's a show of force, as opposed to just like, hey, let's all get together and show that there's a lot of us. They were trying to apply political pressure, I think, in a very astute way. And then what I guess you would call Malcolm X the sword, right?
Yes.
There's the menace of violence in Malcolm X that buttresses what Martin Luther King is doing. But they're both astute political actors, and we just, again, don't think of them that way. Like Kennedy has a quote about how people want their kids to be president, not politicians. And that distinction, I think people want Martin Luther King to be this I don't know, like this preacher activist, when really he was a astute political operator who managed to do things that have never been done before or since.